It's just occurred to me that we should have done this podcast with me in Charlie's bedroom and him in mine, and we should have done like a
Yeah,
we fucked
we
up.
should have done a
Body swap.
swap,
We fucked
and
up.
we could have.
That'd
What's
have
up,
been
mate? How you
perfect.
doing? All right,
Yeah.
all right. I'm magic.
Oh no, is that our sound?
Basically.
Your favorite film is awful.
Hello, and welcome to Your Favourite Film is Awful. The weekly show where we take your favourite films and new releases and defend them against negative reviews. As always, I am Luke MJ Powell, and with me today we have Charlie Lilly
How you doing, mate?
and Sean Grimsley's back. Hello, Sean.
I'm doing well, thank you.
You're doing well. Good. Didn't ask you, but I'm glad
Charlie
that you are.
did.
Now, Sean,
Hi.
you have come, and you proposed a film when you apparently did that. I saw that visual humour for those. He looked down because I said the C word. Sean, you have arrived with a film, and I'm not going to pretend to beat around the bush and make you, play around and get you two to decide. I'm just going to say, Sean, you brought the film. You're going to tell us what the plot of that film is.
Well,
So,
today. Oh,
yeah, you announced the film. I forgot to announce it. Go for it.
oh, sorry. I feel like I
No,
beat
the
you
spotlight is all yours, my friend. Go, go, go.
It's never not. Today we are doing the 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020 release, Freaky, starring Vince Vaughn as a teenage girl. That's right, Vince Vaughn as a teenage girl. You heard it right. It's a body swap horror film. Vince Vaughn, as Vince Vaughn, plays a psycho killer who, using some sort of ancient Aztec dagger, stabs a young girl. The character is called Millie. I've forgotten the actress's name. And gets stopped in the act, and as a result, there's a body swap, and she becomes him, and he becomes her, and it's ensues some antics in a comedy high school body swap fashion, but with lots of gore.
Fantastic.
Yeah, pretty perfect.
Thanks.
Of course, you didn't really highlight some of the elements. And one of those is that this is like a teen movie. There's an element of love in this horror comedy. And Caroline's, this first review from Caroline, it's a half star, obviously, kind of hones in on that with quite a simple declaration. It's not true love unless they'd make out with you when you were stuck in Vince Vaughn's body. And I feel that's true. I don't understand how that's a half-star review. I feel like that should be a 5-star review. You guys are in relationships. Would you kiss your significant other if they were Vince Vaughn?
I thought you were saying we were in a relationship with each other then. I was like, I think you misunderstood why.
Well, you
why
guys
we've
have
been
been getting very close. Don't think I haven't been noticing those subtle looks you've been giving each
Yeah,
other.
no,
through
we're
the
trying
camera.
to. Yeah, no, we've moved away from that. That's why I'm recording separately today, just so people don't get the wrong idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Go on, Char.
Right. Well, I don't know really what to say about that.
The answer's yes, obviously.
Yeah,
you
I
both
guess
say
so.
yes, and then we move on.
I mean, that
You'd
was
be
my favourite
more than
scene in the
happy.
movie. I must
That
admit.
scene is so
when
good.
he's
Right.
in the car with is it Brooker?
Yeah,
Booker.
Brooker sounds right.
Booker, yeah.
Well,
Booker.
fun actually thing actually. I think his name's Booker Strode, which is a reference to Laurie Strode.
Laurie Strode,
from
Halloween,
which I thought was cool. But yeah, that whole scene I thought was hilarious, and yeah, it is actually really sweet. He must actually genuinely love her. The fact that he's kissing Vince Vaughn instead of her. Technically, it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know if yeah.
It is an
I
odd
thought
one.
that whole scene was hilarious to me. I just thought that was the promise of the premise almost. Do you know what I mean? Like that's where the scene where you get exactly what you came for with the whole body swap stuff in this fashion of it being Vince Vaughn, a girl in Vince Vaughn's body, which is the funniest idea that anyone's ever come up with. And I just think, even though this film kind of hits on sort of tropes that we've seen loads of times in horror movies, I think that its fresh take of having this sort of body swap thing was a hilarious and ingenious idea that I'm excited to go further into detail with. But Sean, what did you think of what she just said then about this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what Luke said about it, that's a 5-star review
Yeah.
of that scene, not a half-star. I think
true.
that scene is the thing that really sells the premise. Like, and it's such
Yeah.
a wonderful gem in there because you're like, they're not going to go. I wouldn't expect them to go and do that, but it's actually like a really sweet and endearing moment when
It
you
is.
analyze it. But it's hilarious because you know as soon as that, like there's a millisecond where they break character right at the end of that because it's like it's not even just Vince Vaughn making out with a young another guy. It's Vince, like a nearly probably 60-year-old man making out with a teenager, like an early 20-year-old. That's just funny in and of itself.
It's true.
And I think that's what the film does in spades. It has the sensibility to kind of go like, yeah, we'll go there because we're just having a great time with it.
100%. It doesn't try to take itself too seriously. It just has a great time. And like you said, you was explaining the plot a minute ago, Sean. And I just love that they just, it's a dagger, an ancient dagger. Stab that in. They don't fuck about trying to come up with some bullshit to try and really go in and explain it. They go, let's get that out of the way so we can have the hijinks of the body swap. And I admired it for that.
Well, I mean, in that element, they did the usual body swap storyline trope where you don't find out specifics until halfway through. So in this case, it was the dagger happens, and then we find out more about the dagger after everything's happening. So yeah, but that's fine. That was the short review, the little one, just to get the gears going, making sure that you're still awake, even though we've only just started. So this next review is the critical review. It is from G. Allen Johnson. It is a longer review, and I've also top and tailed it because the middle bit was all them just like explaining the plot and being mean, and I was like, nah, I don't need any of that. So I've just taken the beginning and I've taken the last couple of paragraphs. I'll pause after a paragraph and let you talk. Poor old Mary Rogers. What would the late author and daughter of composer Richard Rogers have thought of her classic children's book Freaky Friday, a cute story about a mother and a daughter who mysteriously switch bodies, being reimagined as a gory horror film? So that's just a quick setup paragraph. How do we feel about it being a reimagining? Another Freaky Friday-esque film. Because a lot of the reviews that I found were like, it's just Freaky Friday. Fuck it. 1 star. And I was like, but that's film. That's storytelling.
But but also that's the point of this movie. It's like the guy that made this has made, before it made Happy Death Day, and I think he was the producer on Happy Death Day too, like he kind of figures out what's a genre that could be fun to do as horror, and that's almost a gimmick in some ways, but it's like
Definitely.
if you get it right, it like that's the fun of the premise in and of itself. I don't see that as a negative thing at all. I think and horror's a very very sub-genre based horror anyway. There's always some division of it. I think he's found some fresh angles on it personally. And I think he nailed it, especially with this one.
Yes, I do agree. I think to take the concept of the Freaky Friday, put it in the movie. I mean, the movie was literally going to be called Freaky Friday the 13th. Until they changed it to Freaky, which I think is great. I would have been happy with that as well. And obviously there's a lot of references to Friday the 13th in this movie, particularly with the mask and Vince Vaughn's just general size.
And it takes place on Friday the 13th.
Exactly that.
Which was when I was born.
There you go. It makes a lot of sense.
I'm tall and I'm murderous.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, like with Happy Death Day, he took sort of Groundhog Day and put it into a horror movie. I get that people can think, oh, that's a bit derivative or whatever, but like it's not like the films. It's not like Joker, for example, where it's not clearly setting out what it's inspired by. It's trying to pretend it's something new, even though it is clearly a derivative of Taxi Driver and King Comedy. Whereas, for example, this film, to me, is like, it's called Freaky. It's Freaky Friday. We're not going to shy away from that. We're going to give you exactly that, but we're just going to reimagine it as no different to how Disney would reimagine a Freaky Friday story, but then do it as a horror. And I don't think there's anything wrong with turning something that was this sort of kid's book, I guess, with a mum and a daughter, and then turning it into this horror film and making it interesting and still if it works as a movie, it works at the end of the day for me. You know what I mean, if it can take that premise and make a fun movie out of it, then it's allowed to do that.
Yeah. Just like Joker did. Shall we continue?
And I think what's really cool about this one is that the premise in and of itself kind of gives you a ticking clock.
Yeah.
Which horror movies don't typically have. Like,
true.
you know, they kind of almost have to create a fictional one, which they still do in this, which is like, it's the birthday, or it's the anniversary of, or it's which is the typical one, or it's like the high school dance that's happening. And, you know, there are movies that have kind of subverted that expectation for comedy before. I think The Guest is the best example, but, you know, I think it fully deserves to exist.
I agree.
Good. In Freaky, there is no character growth. Millie, her mother, and sister are mourning the death of their father/husband, but that plot strand goes undeveloped. Vaughn and Newton look as if they're having fun, but each play one note. Essentially, they're the same people at the end of the movie as at the beginning.
False.
Yes, I disagree with that. I think they do
False.
change. I think they learn to all sort of come together a bit more. They learn that, particularly at the end with that end scene where they're all sort of teaming up to kick his ass. I think that said enough through their actions that they've all realised that, you know, their dad's not here, but at least they still all have each other. And yeah, maybe it's not the most in-depth and interesting character study of all time, but you know, I think it has some really nice character stuff in it that I was not expecting from the trailer, and it didn't necessarily need to have it, particularly when it comes to the mum's character. I really liked how she was handled, with how they showed her drinking habits, and how she was very sort of not controlling, but very requiring of her daughter's time, which I think is very true to people who are in that scenario, I find. So I really like those little touches, because it didn't necessarily need to have that.
I agree. The sequence in the bar when they're in the changing room in the mall, which is in the middle of a huge chase sequence.
Fantastic.
It just slows it down for a little bit of character moment where that movie couldn't have had that scene and it still would have been fine. The rest of the movie still makes sense. And as much as, you know, it's played a little bit for laughs at the beginning and at the end, but there's a genuine moment in between, because, you know, it doesn't go to the heights of, you know, like character explanation. It's not a Paul Thomas Anderson film. I'm not trying to learn, you know, why Tom Cruise is like the way Tom Cruise is.
Yeah, exactly.
In Magnolia, but I actually think it goes a little bit above and beyond what anyone would expect from something within this genre, particularly a comedy horror. And you know, it reminds me actually of what Vince Vaughn does very well in those movies, those kind of like old school Vince Vaughn movies. He always finds a moment to really pull it back and kind of ground it in something where the character is able to like confront what you know, what bad choices they're making or how they've been behaving and anything like that. And I know that's a plot of storytelling, but I do think that Vince Vaughn himself has a very good eye for that with the stuff that he's done, whether it be comedy or drama.
I agree.
And I think I you know, I can see that that's the kind of thing that might have actually really appealed to him about this as well.
Yeah. The film devolved into chases and hide and seek and climaxes at the school prom. Strangely, as the murders pile up at school, with the killer now in a female body, the campus isn't placed on lockdown, and the prom moves ahead as planned. Which is a lie. This reviewer has lied to you,
Yeah,
dear
that's
listener.
that's not what happens.
That's
They
not what
have a
happens.
secret party.
They do.
They do.
Yeah,
Wait-
no, that's fully a lie.
Ruins
Yeah.
his
It
argument,
is
doesn't it?
interesting that there's no repercussions for the female, the girl, the girl, the bully that he freezes. Like, she falls out and smashes, but there's no like repercussions, even though that happens.
Oh,
like,
yeah, like,
hours before.
Where is she? Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Actually,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I mean, if you kind of analyze it that much, and because I watched this film quite a while back, so I rewatched it just in advance of this. In watching it again, I was like, if you were the killer, you would just leave. Like, nobody, just leave town. Just like, if you were going to analyze the movie that deeply, but of course, you're not going to.
Yeah.
So, you know, and also I think what I like about this is that there's room for a sequel. and I'll gladly,
I
want
agree.
it.
Definitely.
I gladly want a sequel.
I'd be well up for that.
Blumhouse has been on a roll in 2020 with The Invisible Man, a terrific reimagining of the Universal horror classic, and a compelling first 4 in the Welcome to the Blumhouse series on Amazon Prime. But Freaky is, dare we say, soul-sucking? And that's the end of the review.
Wow. I mean, I hate when people make a point but
And then
don't
don't back it
care
up.
to and don't care to give us the reason that how they
Yeah, I
arrived
agree.
at it, because it's like I mean I can't think of really I can't think of any movie that's soul sucking per se. Like,
Soul-sucking.
I probably like it's such a specific term.
It is true.
Like
yeah.
it's such a specific term. As I'm sure that if you put me in something and made me watch something that I know I don't like, maybe I could arrive at that. But off the top of my head, nothing comes to mind, because to me that's such a dramatic reaction to something. But
Very
without figuring out how they've arrived at that point, I mean, I can't really like say other than I disagree. I think this film knows exactly what it is, and I think this film actually arrives at being, I would say, 90% successful at everything. Like as a whole film, it's 90% successful. And I think it's because Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You, for me, weren't funny enough to be comedies and weren't gory enough to be horror films. And so they kind of just sat in this middle ground where it was like, I enjoyed them, but I didn't get I didn't get what I wanted out of the premise from either of them. I think the director of Freaky, Landon, only did the first one or the second one. I can't remember which way around it was. But I think it was a really good trial run for this, because the first thing that struck me was how good the gore was in the opening sequence, and it leaning into the tropes of horror of like all the teenagers drinking and having conversations about sex. It was like so knowingly doing that, and because you know the premise of the movie, you kind of go in with your guard down and your suspension to disbelief, and those conversations in and of themselves can be funny. And then the gore, especially the one with the wine bottle, that one came out of nowhere, and I was like, this is top tier. Like, this has got something for the horror fans, which I don't think Happy Death Day to You had. And it followed it up with, for me, some great comedy. And what I really like about this one, and I will say this is why I 100% don't think it's soul-sucking, I think nearly all of the characters are memorable.
Yes, I would agree with that.
All individual, all got something to do, and it all kind of works into the narrative as a point that character has to do this thing.
Yes, definitely.
And I think that's some heavy lifting to do for a film that is essentially a gimmick. Like, it's based on a pun, essentially.
Yes.
Like, I think it really delivers.
I agree. I think not even that. Like, it has the scares, it has the horror kills, but it also kind of has like revenge kills in it, like cathartic kills, like the scene with the three guys try to basically like put themselves onto the character. They then you then get to see them like then bodies get like sliced up with a chainsaw, and it's very cathartic because you're like, yeah, fuck these guys, in a way, which I wasn't expecting from this. I was expecting, it's gonna be a horror, I'm gonna be, scared but also laughing throughout, and then to have this moment of like, oh, hold on, here's the reverse. Let's actually see someone get killed. We're actually kind of rooting for the killer. I know that's kind of a thing anyway, that people who are outcast society sort of usually like resonate with the killer character in these horror movies. And sometimes, like, I know Rob Zombie spoke about that before, where he said that when he was growing up, he used to relate more to Mike Myers and Frankenstein or whatever, because he felt like, this ugly kind of freak from society, because what he liked and what he was interested in wasn't necessarily accepted within his community that he lived in at the time. So he saw himself and rooted for the killers. And I kind of like that this took that and sort of was like, oh, no, even though you hate this guy, you hate this person this whole time, we're now going to see you see him, root for him, chop up these bad guys. Which I like that. I thought that was a cool...
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, especially with the wood teacher, the craftsman, the guy that was bullying Millie when Millie was Millie, and then tried it again when Millie was the killer. I think that one definitely highlights your point.
And
of
also,
just like, that guy was such a dick, he deserved to die.
and putting Alan Ruck in any movie instantly makes that movie better for me. Come on.
Exactly.
Shout
I
out
just
Ferris
wanted to-
Bueller, Speed, Spin City. My boy.
Fantastic.
I just wanted to quickly highlight, with the end of that review, of course, they point out two of the other Blumhouse productions, one being the Amazon thing and then The Invisible Man, and completely fails to mention that Blumhouse released 10 films in 2020. And one of those films was Fantasy Island. Like, when you're throwing out that much material, you're gonna have swings and misses.
Yeah.
But they focused on notably one of the best, really, like, The Invisible Man. I know, Charlie, that was in your top 10, wasn't it?
Yeah, I adore that movie.
Yeah,
Exactly,
I think it's
so-
same here. It's a masterpiece. It's perfect, near perfect.
Yeah.
It was like whatever the opposite of confirmation bias, where they went in going, oh no, we have the Invisible Man as like the top tier. I'm expecting this to be bad, and as soon as it was, they were like, cool, I can make a point that it wasn't as good as the Invisible Man, as like a knockoff a star.
Well, it's just an unresearched response, really, isn't it? I mean, that's not what we do here.
It's true.
We put the time in, we put the effort. Proof's
In
in
fairness, some other parts of the review were nicer, but they kind of milled around the points, and there was too much words, and I'm not into that. You only get so many words.
Has anyone that we've done negative reviews and read out and defended against ever got in contact?
Oh, no.
They
I
haven't,
think.
no.
I,
That
do
would
you know
be
what?
great, though, wouldn't it?
I think
would
it. Do you know what? I think it'd be really cool. We should send the episode, like an episode link to the review as like a reply comment when we're done. See if we can, generate some responses.
It'd be interesting.
That would be
And then I guess that it would really highlight the whole free use and like how much we're actually allowed. They'll be sending back freaking
Cease and desists.
being like, "Whoa,
Yes.
you're using far too much of these reviews, boys."
Did you not? Did we not put it as like one of the Patreon tiers or something that people can write a negative review of the movie they don't like, and we was gonna use that review in one of the things? Did we do that in the end? I don't know if we
No, in
discussed
the
it.
end, it's kind of just been like a general thing that, like, I've thrown it out on the Instagram being like, hey, did you like this movie? And those people that said no, I'll like individually ask them why. But at the moment, nobody's on their own volition been like, hey, this movie's crap. But then I think that kind of links in with the fact that they don't know what film's coming out until the
It's
day
out,
before.
Yeah, of
or it's
course.
out.
Well, here's the time, listener. You've been listening. Get on the Patreon, please.
Exactly.
Support your local film podcast.
Yeah. And with that rousing speech, we're going to move on to Marigold JPEG with a 2 out of 10. Some of the acting was very poor, and the movie relied too much on old tropes like the token gay boy or person of colour. There was also a line near the start of the movie where the boy said he wanted to sound rapey. Not a vital part of the movie, but made me and my friend uncomfortable. The gore was decent though, and suspense was built up well through music choice and camera angles / shots. And that does kind of link back to what you were saying about the three guys, because earlier on they treat a gay comment being like, I'm going to homecoming for the white guys that will realize that they're fluid, and then the
Straight guys,
yeah, straight guys, and then the Nia, the other friend, the other best friend is like, that sounds rapey, and he's like, I want it to. Have you seen the caliber of people in this town? But then later on we have the 3 against 1, so it's like rape is a joke, but rape is not a joke, and you will get killed. Which some people found uncomfortable. There were a lot of negative reviews on it. I don't know if either of you, like, it's kind of indefensible, but if either of you want to say anything, there's time. But it was one of those that I had to include one of the reviews because it was in so many.
Yeah, I mean, I want to jump on and say I think the movie's actually really concerned with like positive representations of a range of people, but I mean, most notably, female characters. And I think I think there's an element to that review, especially, which it sounded like they didn't realize that they were seeing a comedy. They thought they were seeing a straight horror film. Because lines like that early on, to me, I was like, I understand that this is using the genre and kind of reflecting it back on itself. And so by the time you get to the end of the movie, that especially that final sequence, it very much is that. I also think...
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, thank you. And I also... Oh, sorry, I don't know which one. But I also think that the casting of Vince Vaughn in and of itself works on a comedy level just because we expect Vince Vaughn as a comedy. He's kind of re-established himself in more recent years as a kind of serious actor or like a grindhouse kind of B-movie actor as well. Intimidating figure using his height, which kind of plays into this. But I also think, if you look at a career reflection of Vince Vaughn, he disappeared for a while because I think the kind of movies that he put out in the early to mid 2000s, even starting with Swingers, were movies that were very much concerned with male representations and ideologies of females. Not in a way that I think it gets rapey, but in a way that by today's standard, that comedy just has dated. I think Ben Stiller also exists within that field with some of the movies that he did.
Yeah.
And that just that kind of comedy hasn't aged well. That's not to say it can't. You can look back on it and reflect on it and be like, well, it was of the time, but it just hasn't aged well. And I think Vince Vaughn got a little bit stuck, especially in the last few years. And I think that this role especially kind of reflects that, of him saying like, how can I do comedy now? Well, let's actually like answer that question a little bit. I think this movie's really concerned with positive representations of female characters. I think the stuff with the token gay kid is actually really spot on, because he comes
really
home
funny.
and the mum's like, "You're not straight. You're 100% gay."
Yeah.
That seems
Yeah.
That
was
seems
a really good
really
scene.
funny and shows like a level of acceptance that is typically, it is obviously, we're living in a more civilized society, but it's still not a great, it's still not a fully civilized society. And I think things like that are actually really empowering. I hope they come across as empowering and useful, because I thought that was a really good scene.
I 100% agree. And he got a lot of laughs in the cinema. I thought that was I completely agree with Sean. And I think that to go back onto that sort of reflection of Vince Vaughn's career, I think that's really interesting, because I felt that this movie leaned into his biggest strengths as an actor, which is, he's playing the comedy role, but he's also, in these later years, like you said, Sean, he's played this like more intimidating figure. Like you look at things like Bruce in Cell Block 99, True Detective Season 2, Dragged Across Concrete, all these sort of roles that he started to play now, I feel like were perfectly summed up in this movie of like, it's funny, but he still gets to be that intimidating figure. And I just really like that. And I don't think we could have got that. I don't think we could have got this movie with Vince Vaughn like 10 years ago. No. Like, people wouldn't abide him as the killer. They would have saw him as like, oh, it's the funny guy. But his career has shaped and changed, and now it's become this. And I thought that was really interesting that you said that, because I didn't think about that until just now. But yeah, what a great role for Vince Vaughn. In terms of the representation of that, I mean, I think the horror genre is it's always dealt with very touchy subjects in a very aggressive manner. I mean, you look at stuff like I Spit on Your Grave sort of thing, like films like that where they deal with sort of sexual assault and rape and stuff, and revenge flicks. And I feel like this movie, is aware of those tropes and, kind of deals with it. And like I said, has that cathartic scene later on where, you get to watch the killer slaughter these people, and you're kind of rooting for the killer. And in a similar way, I think Eli Roth does that with Green Inferno. He makes these really annoying characters that are so annoying that you're kind of rooting for what the killers are going to do to them, but also what the killers are doing to them is so horrific that you can't really root for them at the same time. It's a really interesting moral
Dilemma
to be in. And I think this movie kind of touched on that a little bit as well, which I thought was cool. Which I was expecting. I was literally just expecting this silly sort of comedy killers, get a couple of kills, which obviously it is, but it does have moments of, you know what? That was good. They thought about this. They didn't just allow it to be something that we forget about next month. You know what I mean? I feel like it kind of sits on its own little thing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed. And for Charlie, this review goes out to you and some of our older listeners. It's from Alexander Malson, and it has the what's the it's not star. It's like the category. It's categorized as extremely offensive.
Okay.
Freaky is a fine reminder to us all that just because you have an idea for a movie doesn't mean it should be made. And this is one of those times. Apart from the grotesque violence, lewd sexual content, and dialogue and vulgarity, it's just purely unoriginal. It's just a dark retelling of Freaky Friday. Please, do yourself a favour and stay very far away from this film. I believe it will grieve the Holy Spirit if you see this film, as I know how ashamed I felt after. There are much better uses of your time.
I mean, calling something unoriginal, which is a pastiche in and of itself, is very, very, like, that's unoriginal because you simply haven't understood. Like, I try not to get angry at people, but that's stupid. You can't say something is unoriginal if it's a pastiche.
Yes,
that's
true.
essentially what it does. But also, the film is original because it pastiches plot points. The structure of it is pastiched. The kind of tropes of the genre are pastiche, but no more than any other horror film.
Exactly.
But then within that, it actually has some really good characters, and that's where movies survive or they die. And this movie has those good moments. Like, I buy that these people are friends. The only thing I will say 100% doesn't work is when Vince Vaughn first becomes the girl, he's almost animalistic. It's not the same Vince Vaughn that we see by the end of the movie as the killer. It's the killer as this kind of like just makes grunting noises or says singular words or, you know, just wants to kill because it's like they're just like a Jason Voorhees character. But by the end of the movie, they like, especially in the final sequence, it's like, no, I hate women, or like he's having like proper conversations, and it's like that's the only disconnect with the character that I have. I think the characters in this movie, as I said earlier, they all kind of are memorable. I think they all get some good moments. Even the douchebag jocks, they kind of all have a little bit of their own individual personality, and some of them are over the top, and you know, but I remembered them all, especially on the second watch. I was like, oh yeah, there's some cool stuff. And it's like, I think when you watch something for a second time, you really get to find out what holds up and what doesn't. And I actually think, other than the point I just made about the character, kind of not necessarily following like an interesting arc as the villain character, I think a lot of this film really holds up pretty well. And I really disapprove of that review. Do better, reviewer. If you're listening, and you want to fight, let's go. I'm here.
He's ready.
Violence is never the answer, sure.
Man's been training with his boy Neto.
He would hate that you just called him Neto. It's
Neto.
Neto. He's like, it's Neto because everyone calls him Neto. But yeah, no.
What a lovely joke for just us.
For just us, yeah.
For those that don't know and only listen to the podcast, Charlie Lilly is an absolute machine. He's ripped. He's toned. He is an MMA genius. The first M in MMA actually stands for Charlie Lilly, but Charlie Lilly's so powerful that the C was copyrighted just for Charlie Lilly, so they had to call it M. It was originally called Charlie Lilly Martial Arts, and they had to change it to mix, but the M still stands for Charlie Lilly. But not a lot of people know that.
I can't believe you're turning me into like Master Ken. Everyone's gonna think, what the fuck is? Oh,
no, I'm turning you into Chuck Norris jokes.
Chuck Norris.
I love it.
If only I could be half the man that
Keep
Chuck
this train
Norris is.
coming. Charlie Lilly, the new Chuck Norris.
The new Chuck
I'm so,
Norris.
You've already
I'm
got
so-
the beard.
I may have overread that a little bit, but for those that are just Spotify or however you get your podcast listeners, no visual listeners, Charlie is actually like an incredible athlete. And is very skilled in the arts of MMA. So like that wasn't a
thank
full-on pastiche. He is incredibly gifted and focused in that area, which is why we need to hurry this up because man's got to run off for training.
It's true.
And it's also quite amusing
very
because up until this point, I'm pretty sure the only indicators to Charlie's health have been the multiple times he's complained about his neck.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. Which finally, if anyone out there really cares, it might finally be getting better. Yes.
Hey!
But yeah.
Chiropractors are real. I don't want us to get too Joe Rogan, but chiropractors do.
Next review.
Chiropractors do
That's how
good
we
work.
stopped Joe Rogan heads.
I was just going to make a point quick about what you said about the characters and stuff. I just wanted to jump in and say about Catherine Newton's performance because I thought that she was really good. I thought she was really good in it. I thought that I like the Vince Vaughn's. I wonder. I was really curious to see the process of how well they worked together, like behind the scenes, and like how many things they talked out. Because I noticed a lot of time they kind of kept this tick of like she was sort of biting her like fingers nails, and Vince Vaughn kept doing that a lot when he was in the body and vice versa. And I was like, I wonder if that was a tick that they all agreed with the director, or if that was the actors, or how many things they sort of beat it out together. I was really interested in that process. And
that actually leads into this review because you just... I wish you'd saved that like for 30 seconds. So, this is from Ronnie. It's a 0.5 star. Neither a good slasher movie nor a good body swap comedy. Vince Vaughn's performance has been overrated. There's little to connect him to Millie, as he just plays the stereotype of the panicky teenager. Jack Black did it better in the Jumanji movies, and yes, Rob Schneider did it better in The Hot Chick. I despise everyone who told me that this was good.
First of all, hi Ronnie, thanks for your review. I'd like to just remind you that I told you Charlie Lilly does MMA, and he's coming for you. Simple as that. Coming for you, Ronnie.
To kind of sit on my negative throne, as it were, there is something to be said that apart from the tick that both Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton are doing, there is a bit of a disconnect, I felt. Like, when we see Millie run, it's like a proper run. But when Vince Vaughn is Millie, he does the kind of stereotypical pansy hands, like the limp at the wrist run that's very stereotyped when it comes to, oh, I'll play a girl, I'll do the limp wrist thing.
But so did Jack Black in Jumanji, which he cited as a reference. It's interesting he brought that up because that hadn't occurred to me. And unlike Jumanji, where for me that Jack Black routine actually got quite old, it didn't get old in this because, strangely, ironically to what I've said, I actually think that they did some really interesting things, like the fact that Millie is so used to being able to run properly that when she's actually running later and chasing the killer version of herself down, she's got old man knees. And so she doesn't run the same way. Like, that's a really well thought out script moment. And like, that's actually well considered. And falls over, like, you know, like, and the callbacks to the idea that, you know, there are a couple of references to the idea. She's like, oh, like, it's really funny peeing when you're a guy. And, you know, the very end joke is like, having balls sucks. It's like, they at least were aware of that. I think you're allowed to play it for laughs a little bit. Yes, it's stereotypical, but, you know, there are some stereotypes that exist for a reason. Some are positive, some are negative. I think this one's harmless in and of itself, and I think it comes early on enough that it kind of works in the body transformation realization thing.
Yes, I agree.
It is played for laugh, but this is a horror comedy. It's a pastiche. Yep. You kind of amplify things up a little bit.
100%. I think there's actually some really funny jokes in it that I think, like, for example, I watched this with my girlfriend and she really laughed at this one line, which I think is hilarious, when the the killer who's in Millie's body first comes in, and you got the leather jacket and stuff, and she's like, "Oh, I kind of like what he's doing there. I kind of like what he's doing," and that I thought that was hilarious, and like I thought that was such a great idea, and I do think that's very interesting from like particularly my girlfriend was saying from her perspective of like, yeah, she, even though they're in these dire circumstances, she probably still would point out the fact that this person, her outfit, his outfit looks nice. I mean, she does that on the street when she sees people like, oh, that's a nice outfit. Whereas like, I'm not even thinking about that. Like, I'm not even ever thinking about that. But I thought that was a nice joke that they put in there. And I think that it's tough to buy and sell that Vince Vaughn obviously is a girl trapped in his body, him being such a big sort of towering figure, and I think like there's obviously going to be little ticks that are going to not quite translate over, but I do think, like Sean said, you can justify it with the fact that, you know, she's not used to being in that body, so therefore there are going to be things that don't translate as well as when she's in her own body. Just also to go back onto when we talk about him falling over, I think I read on the IMDb trivia, that he actually fell over there. He fell over a plant pot or something, and they were just like, "Yeah, we'll keep it in." And because he carried on with his performance, because he actually gets up and keeps running. And I was like, "Well, great." But even like, it works so perfectly, like you would have thought it was a scripted moment. Yeah, I just enjoyed that. I think their performances together were great. I think, and I guess, you know, he does Jack Black did it in Jumanji, but like, if you really want to go deep cuts here, you know, it's a boy-girl thing, you know. They did that with that's the whole Freaky Friday trope they did. You know, they've done it millions of times, so I don't think it's derivative of any of that. It's like Sean said already, it's pastiche to it, and it's tried to do its own version of that with the killer. And I think it does it great, and it does it in a way that we've not seen before.
And also, I another way that I can defend this film, and will defend this film, is that the typical structure for a character arc for both characters in a movie like this is that they have to, by being someone else, they learn something about who they are, and they change, and it's the process of accepting that change at the end that allows them to transform back. That this movie doesn't really have this. The opportunity to be someone else presents them with opportunities to learn about other characters, but they don't in and of themselves have to change. It's literally just a race against time. It's a countdown movie. And I think that's really, really interesting, that the movie doesn't have that kind of structural arc to be able to lean against. And I think that's almost why, as much as this is a pastiche, it's almost refreshing, because it relies on the characters and the character dynamics in and amongst themselves having to like fire on all cylinders. And I think this film actually achieves and is successful because of that.
Yeah, I would say Millie does develop like a backbone. She becomes more confident by the end of the film.
I agree.
And the Blissfield butcher learns how to talk. So there are your two arcs. I don't know if we have time anymore. No, I've said it now. Okay, I'm gonna just say the ending of this review, because I wanted to. Yeah, that's it really. That's the whole. So this is the end of Ronnie Davis's half-star review. But when the logic and continuity is as bad as it is in this film, you come up with a real stinker. If someone is shot multiple times and on a gurney in an ambulance headed to the hospital, don't have them magically reappear with no wounds without an explanation.
It's the trope of Friday the 13th. That's the horror trope. They come back.
Yeah. Watch a horror movie, guy.
Yeah.
It's a trope, and I only highlighted it because it was a plot hole. And Charlie, I know you love plot holes. They're your
think that's a plot hole.
things.
It's not even a plot hole.
No, I
think that's
think
a plot
the
hole.
plot hole is the fact that he's undamaged, or at least like his shirt is probably not shot up. But I just wanted to get that out, and I've kind of butchered that review. I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry, Ron.
Blissfield butchered that review.
I butchered that review because of time, because Charlie wants to fight people.
I want to go back before you talk about that. I just want to go back onto the performance thing, because I just had a thought that I really like how this movie's kind of about acting itself. In the sense that, you know, you have that scene where Millie's tied up, the killer's tied up, and starts pretending to be Millie, and like, oh no, she's in danger. And I find like there's a lot of stuff like that where it's kind of about playing a character, or Yeah, I mean, like you said, I do think, like you said, the only problems with it do come with the fact that Vince Vaughn's character's not established enough to know that, you know, wait, hold on, now he's smart enough to be able to pretend to be like a scared girl and all these sort of things. But I enjoyed that and I thought that was really fun, so I just wanted to put that on.
Awesome, lovely. Is the film awful? In the black and white scale, remove your masks. The defense is null and void anymore. You don't need to defend it. Is the film awful?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
I agree. I feel
Right.
we're all on the awesome page. I feel Sean is far further across that line than I am, but no, it's a good film. It's definitely worth a watch. Give it the money.
It's been a tough week though, you know, like as the captain of the English football team. It's been a tough week.
Harry Kane right here. You heard it, ladies and gentlemen.
Harry Kane.
Lovely.
It's been tough.
Cool. Yeah, do you want to plug and leave? Oh, double bill. It's Happy Death Day, right? That's the only real app. And then any Freaky Friday-esque movie. Do you have anything else to
Yeah,
bring to a
kind of
double
like
bill?
a body swap. Any kind of body swap would do. I actually have a real soft spot. There's a Jason Bateman, Ryan Reynolds body swap.
Yes, I've seen that one. That's good.
I can't think what it's called, but I actually really enjoyed that.
Is that the change up?
The
Ryan
change up.
Reynolds.
That's it.
Yeah.
so
I kind of
that's
enjoyed
it.
that. So I must
Yeah,
admit.
that was like a low key fun
Yeah,
body
yeah.
swap when body swaps
It's
got
true.
popular again. Yeah, you know, yeah.
I've got.
I'm trying to think of other good like horror comedies. The Final Girls is pretty good.
Oh yeah, I see that. I haven't
which
seen it,
is
but
like I quite enjoyed that, but I think this was better than that. Like in terms of horror comedies, I think this is like top tier.
I'm gonna go with the very underrated Jennifer's Body. I think it fits
naughty.
because it's the high school stuff. It's got humour. It's also scary. Strong female characters. That's my pick. Double bill.
Good shout.
Also, it was an influence for the movie as well, apparently, according to the director.
Oh, nice.
So,
It's a good film.
Plugs. Sean, where can people find you?
They can find me on this podcast. They may also find me at my website, www.seangrimsdeyfilms.com. You can also support my wonderful friend and talented film knowledgeable pop culture expert Matt Whittle for Full Fat videos. As always, check out your local Full Fatter.
And Charles?
you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Your favourite film is awful, or you can find us on Twitter at FabFilmIsAwful, as well as Patreon. Your favourite film is awful.
Wonderful. So yeah, hit us up. Share this if you want to. If you've enjoyed it, press like. Have a lovely day.
It's just
Bye-bye.
occurred to me that we should have done this podcast with me in Charlie's bedroom and him in mine, and we should have done like a
Yeah, we fucked
we
up.
should have done a
Body swap.
swap,
fucked
and
up.
we could have.
That'd
What's
have
up,
been
mate? How you
perfect.
doing? All right, all right. I'm magic.
Oh no, is that how I sound?
Basically. Bye all.
Take care. Bye. Brilliant.
What's your favorite?
God, that's awful.
Favorite?
Awful.
Your favorite film?
Awful.